So I'm back again, and I kind of wanted to talk about something. There seems to be this idea of what a real wrestling fan is. This idea of what defines a proper wrestling fan. You know, a proper wrestling fan has seen this, and this, and does this, and this. And people would assume that this is an attitude that exists only in the smart mark internet wrestling community. That's where this idea comes from. But it's not so much there, but also within the pro wrestling industry itself. There are and have been wrestlers who have this thought process. And one time I remember watching the TV, and there was a Benoit interview long before he killed himself and his family. And he talked about, people coming into the business and all of these things. And I talk to them, and when they tell me, and this is where the argument comes from. So when they tell me that they were a fan of the Ultimate Warrior, I know they were not a real wrestling fan. And I just scratched my head, and I kind of thought, really? Because my thing is, and to address that idea, not every 6-year-old child, 5-year-old child, 7-year-old child, teenage person, grown man, young woman, whatever, turns their TV on and sees the Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask, or All Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestling Weekly with the women's division, or New Japan Pro Wrestling, or Noah, or sees Kobashi and Misawa chop each other in the chest and do tiger suplexes off the ramp onto the floor. Not every child gets to see that. Not every child gets to see some of these technical 5-star rank classics that Dave Meltzer ranks. Not every child gets to see that. Some people will tune in and see the most ridiculous thing, the most ridiculous introduction according to your standards, and that's the thing that draws them into a wrestling fan. Now, you might not like someone like the Ultimate Warrior or a Hulk Hogan. We all have our likes and dislikes. But don't go around saying someone isn't a real fan of the business because they grew up watching The Ultimate Warrior, or they grew up watching Hulk Hogan, or they grew up watching this person or that person that didn't wrestle in Japan in the Budokan for 35 minutes. I just, it just irritates me. And that mindset and that thought process needs to be erased completely. This whole, you support guys that were not really trained and trained in a gym and barefoot on a mat. This whole thought process that people seem to have needs to disappear. You can't tell me that you're more of a real wrestling fan because you watched this match or that match. You are not more a wrestling fan than the next person. So what someone watched The Ultimate Warrior? So what someone watched Hulk Hogan? I know some wrestling fans who became fans around the time of WrestleMania, I think it was 23, when Donald Trump came in and they did the hair versus hair thing. Yeah, that's not the best example of straight pro wrestling, but guess what? It drew some new people in. I know fans who became UFC and MMA fans through people like Kimbo Slice and Brock Lesnar, and yeah, they may not have been the best representation of a well-rounded mixed martial artist according to your standards, but you know what? They drew people in, and they became fans of the sport otherwise. And the funny thing about this mindset is they all seem to say the same thing. Well, we want to see the wrestling business grow, and we want to see the MMA industry grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when things happen that are not, in relation to their ideologies or their standards, a guy like Kimbo Slice comes in, draws 4.5 million viewers on TV, gets new fans into the sport. When someone like that comes in, they get all butthurt. You're not a real fan of the sport. You're not a real fan of the sport. You're not a real fan of the sport. Blah, 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 blah. You know what? Shut up. Every one of you, shut your mouths. Let people, enjoy what they want to enjoy. If there's something that I'm not necessarily into, like John Cena, who I can't stand, but there's someone else that does like him, I'm not going to go out and say, well, they're not a real fan of the wrestling industry. So that's my rant for the day, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Let me know if you've ever come across that mindset, or you've ever heard people say things like that. And write your comments, and please leave feedback. And if you want to subscribe. Although I probably reckon some people might unsubscribe to me now. I hope not. But anyways, I'll wrap it up right now. write some comments, and hopefully I will get back to you soon.